Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me, 320 Sim Pilot. I'm a real-world airline pilot, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you the Flight Sim Studio's Boeing 727-200 for Microsoft Flight Simulator and Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. This is the passenger variant. We have already seen the FSS 727 freighter, and this is the passenger variant. So this includes some new things, including a custom cabin and some cabin crew simulations and some improvements over the original as well, as they've updated certain things. In today's video I'm going to take it for a full flight and just show you the aircraft so you can see what you think of it and see if it's of interest to you. Thank you to Flight Sim Studios for sending this over. This was provided by them, but all the opinions in today's video are my own. There's some great things about this aircraft, and there's some things like the, as you can see here, some of the texturing alongside that do leave some room for improvement, I think, in the future. But overall, if you want to fly a retro jet, this is a fantastic option in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and like I say, now available in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. Retailing for £29.11, excluding VAT. This is a separate purchase from the freighter variant. So it's up to you which one might suit you more. We're going to have a look at some old school navigation as well as some old school flying in today's video, as there's lots of great things about this. And as I said in my original video on the freighter variant, it is a particularly good aircraft for getting into retro aircraft, and it has some fantastic features to make life pretty easy for you in what is otherwise a very complicated machine which normally needed 3 crew to operate. The Boeing 727 first flew in the early 1960s and was a hugely popular airliner for lots and lots of reasons. It was designed to be a ability to operate into smaller airfields without lots of ground handling equipment. So like the 737 that came after it, it sits very low to the ground with options for easy options for getting the bags in and out. It also uses what was quite common or contemporary at the time, which is the T-tail configuration, which we no longer see. Soon after this, that was moved out in favour of the underwing style that we get these days. It is a relatively fast machine, and it uses the same engines as we had on the MD-80 and on the 737 original, the 200 series or 100 series when they first came out. It's very noisy as well, so it is famous for that, as these are very old school low bypass ratio engines. Like I say, a very popular machine, and in today's video we're going to get a full taste of what it's like. In the menu we only have the Boeing 727-200, but I can go in and configure it with a nice host of retro liveries included, which is what you'd hope. So we have this lovely Olympic Airways livery. I love the cheat line, so this is what we're going to fly today. PLC also, we have the brushed metal effect of the polished metal effect of the American Airlines, and then a whole host of others: British Airways, Iberia, Pan Am. So from all around the world, we've got Avianca, we've got Air Canada. I like it. A really nice selection of retro liveries down there. If any of those work for you, Alitalia there as well. Very nice. So let's begin with a walk around then on our lovely 727-200. As you can see, it is sitting here with quite a bit of grime on it. It certainly looks like this airplane's been around a while. These first flew in the early 1960s, the original Boeing 727, so it's no surprise it would look a bit grimy today. I do like weathering on my aircraft. I think it's perhaps maybe a tad more than I would like. I'd perhaps ask this one to be cleaned. You might put a message in the tech log complaining about it, but yeah, it is certainly showing its age. As we move around, the texturing in general is nice. You can see some of the larger areas, especially on this sort of chromey style fuselage here. It can actually start to be a little bit bland. As you get closer, there are a few more areas like that. However, there are decals, there are 3D objects as well. We have our pitos and angle of attack indicator up there, and we have the hatches with the suitable grime coming out. But again, if you get too close, things can start to look a little rougher. So it's just worth remembering that. From a distance, this aircraft looks absolutely fantastic and captures the silhouette of the 727 perfectly. It's not an issue when using it either. It's only if you're going to get the camera up and start going around like this, which, to be fair, you might do the first day, and then I doubt you'll be doing much of that. They've also got nice balance of texturing where the reflections in the sunshine look really nice on it. I do like that. As we look at the nose gear, you can see that this is got the chimes, so the water is splayed outwards when it goes through a puddle. That keeps the water low and going under the wing as opposed to up over the wing into the engines. On normal commercial aircraft like the 320, you don't have these. It's very important you don't have them, because if you did, the water would go sideways and straight into the engines, which would be sat there under the wing. As we move along the fuselage, you'll see it's quite a long aeroplane. This is the 727-200, so this is the stretched version. They added quite a lot of fuselage before and behind the wing to make it work. Initially, though, it only had the same takeoff gross weight as the 727 original, the 100. So, yeah, it was mainly just to fit in more passenger numbers if you weren't carrying much cargo. There's some details there. We've got the landing lights, so you can actually see as you get closer that it is an image. This looks more like a 3D object, perhaps. And the slat is drooping, or it's not a slat, this is a Kruger flap. This was what Boeing used to use before they moved on to slats. Airbus over there always, or have used slats for a while, or since the 320, but Boeing originally on the inboard part of even the 747-400 uses Kruger flaps. In fact, I think it uses Kruger flaps all along. So yeah, they did like it. They just look different. They go out from the leading edge like this. Quite how they work, I don't fully know. A little hole for the landing light. Lots of cool landing lights sticking out on the edge here. Again, the texturing as you get too close can look a little bit bland in my opinion, but any sort of distance from it, a normal distance, and it looks great. And again, the modelling is nice. The shapes and the proportions. You even have, look at this, you've got both nav lights, the normal system and the backup system, the strobe lights. That is a NACA duct here, which is used probably, I don't know for sure, typically this duct here would be used for pressurizing the overflow tanks of the fuel system, because you don't want fuel to start draining out of parts of the wing, so you'll allow some air in to pressurize it. Static wicks are modelled, and that looks like fuel jettison to me as well. So yeah, I didn't realize you could do that. Got the trim tabs. Lots and lots of grime, like I say, perfectly believable. I mean, this is an acceptable state for an aeroplane, especially one of this age. But yeah, there we go. I know not everyone likes that. And the landing gear modelled suitably. It looks as well like there is a... Is that to stop the water spraying out from the middle? I don't know. This sort of panel down here. Let's move on to the engines. That's like a cargo hold there. And here they are. These are, and let me get the name right. So I do get this right. It's the Pratt & Whitney JT8D. These are famous engines used on MD-80s, also used on the subsequent Boeing 737, the original classic or Jurassic series as some people refer to them. It is a very noisy engine. The 727 considered one of the noisiest aircrafts in commercial operation. It has 3 low bypass engines and they tend to be the noisiest. So hush kits were installed on later versions, which is not too uncommon, just to get the noise rating down so you could fly it into airports, because airports often put restrictions on airplanes that are just too noisy, and it looks to me like these have the hush kits on with these sort of elongated exhausts. Great fun having 3 engines though, always like that. And I love doing walkarounds on T-tails. The first aircraft I flew was a T-tail, and when you look up at the big high up control surface like that, it just makes the airplane seem absolutely massive. It's crazy. Like I say, the modeling's still very good here. We have the vortex generators, so these energize the airflow as it moves around the tail, and making sure that it then connects properly with the rudder on the back of the vertical stabilizer. And there's, as I say, there you go, see that bloom there. Nice use of the textures. This is the tail skid. This is an elongated aircraft, so risk of a tail strike, and also relatively low performance compared to what we're used to seeing these days. So tail skid, handy thing to have in case of any problem. You wouldn't want to use it in flight. It would still be a whole lot of maintenance and so on, I'm pretty sure, if it did touch the ground, but at least you have something there to protect the aircraft if they think it's a high likelihood, like they do on the 737-300. As we move around, more of the same on this side. So let's jump into the flight deck and get it up and running. On the flight deck now, and you can see this is already a very nice flight deck. The texturing here has no issues in my opinion anyway. There are these larger areas, but yeah, looks fine to me. And then you have the nice detail, especially where you're going to be looking. It's funny, this is a really important part of the airplane to get right for flight sim developers, and they have here as well, because it's always in your vision and it really adds that nice worn out feel, which they do. I fly 787 aircraft that have sort of this similar sort of wear pattern on them. This has various levels of fit, so this is a relatively basic one with the inertial navigation system. We're going to have a look at that later on as we go through the options. But what I do want to do is look around, look at the detail. There's just switches everywhere in here, everywhere. And again, nice decals. Yeah, nice looking flight deck. Again, we know it. We know it from the 727 freighter. It's good. I like it. But we now have this full cabin. So let's open up a passenger door here. You can just click through. I don't know if it had air stairs. Doesn't look like it does, actually. Is there a little panel underneath? I didn't see anything. Oh, we can't leave the airplane. And then we have this super retro. Oh, we do have a full bathroom. Excellent. A fully working toilet. Impressive. That is good. sink does not work, sadly. This is a nice bathroom, even with a flower. Very nice. Looks like you can see through into the flight deck there. Right, as we head down, let's close that up. Always good to see. Galley, quite small. Then you've got a sort of premium cabin. And the main cabin. Again, this is a stretched aircraft. Is it 3 and 3? Yep, 3 and 3. So this is the sort of standard fuselage that later went into the, we had this from the 707, went into the 737, and is still with us today, this format, this 3-3. Boeing did revolutionize everything with that 707 that later transferred into everything. But here's the fun feature. We have, at the back, a set of stairs. This can be deployed if you do it right through the hydraulic system. It can't be deployed in flight, although originally it could. But how cool is that? And you can even see the engine intake running down towards the engine. The engine actually sits at the back of the airplane. The engine is not above you, just the intake is. So the air comes through here and out the back. I think that is fantastic. And we have another bathroom back here. This one's slightly different, less posh. This is more like what I expect to see when I go on holiday. But there we go. So let's get back into the flight deck and get it powered on. As we saw before in my previous video on the freighter version, this airplane can be powered up correctly. You can do everything properly. Of course, an engineer is needed. This is a 3-crew airplane. It's not 2 crew, and you can see why. Because back here we have hydraulic systems, we have the fuel systems, we have the electronic systems, up here, and we have all sorts such as the APU, the pressurization. So lots going on. If you look at the pilots, it's mostly dedicated to flying instruments. So you've got your primary engine gauges, temperature, airspeed, heading, compass, navigation, and so on. That's a weather radar down there, or a storm scope. And on the overhead, it's surprisingly empty. They didn't have to fit much on it because the engineer takes all that. So this is all lighting, unbelievably. Pitot heats, wing anti-ice, so the anti-ice systems you might need to operate. Emergency systems like alternating flaps, and the hydraulic power to the flight controls. Now, these are things that you might need to remove in an emergency whilst flying the aircraft. It's funny to see this because the 787 and the 777 have similar system sort of switch covers up in this part of the flight deck as well, the primary flight controls and so on. I do like seeing that. So we can't start the APU from here. We need the engineer to do it. But you can go up here, battery on, lights come on, airplane has some sort of power. APU is down here, auxiliary power unit. So I can move that to start. And you see it's already lighting up. And actually hear it as well. I don't know, it's quite faint, but it's down at the back. So that's coming online. Circuit field is open, so I can get electrical power from it once it's up and running. And because there's an engine in the way where our APU would normally sit on modern airliners, the APU is actually here in the wing root, unbelievably, next to all the fuel, and that's the exhaust on top of the wing. So that would typically leave a sort of a stain, as you can see there, running back on the wing. Pretty cool, using those new Flight Sim 2024 heat effects. Better than 2020, still not my favourite, still a little bit slow speed, but it is better. The 2020 effects look like a sort of soft campsite fire rather than an intense jet blast. So now we have the APU up and running. The circuit's still open, but it's sitting happily. I'm going to close that, which provides the AC current there, and that's powering up the airplane. So as you can see, the systems work. The airplane's fully there and sitting in the background with us. And you can go through all the procedure if you want. It is actually written over here. So you could start by checking everything's off and then go here, battery, fuel quantity, boost pumps, and so on. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this today because it's long. These airplanes have long checklists. They are more complicated to set up than current generation airliners, and it'll be a very long video, and my video is already very long. So fortunately, if you're like me and you want to do things a little bit quicker, we can go into this iPhone, which is this phone of some variety, the smartphone here, and I can set it up. So if I do pre-flight check, I can click on that, and what happens is you sit here and the engineer works through the items on the checklist. It will sit in amber until they're done, and then it will go green when it is done. While we wait for that to be done by the engineer, we can check here. So this automatically balances the fuel. We can have the package temperature controlled automatically, so I'm going to turn that on. Airspeed bug according to climate descent profile. No, we'll do our own airspeed bug, thank you. EPR limits, set EPR limits according to flight phase based on weight and TAT. That seems like a good idea to have on. So this is, again, making it simpler and simpler and simpler. So there we go. I think that's a nice feature to have. So there we go. That's some automatic monitoring helping us out. What we can also do, if I figure out how to get rid of the phone, there's a way to do that. There we go. Click on the notch, as it were. If you open up this tablet, we get a whole load of information. So here we could do the aft, let's see if I can do the aft stair. There it is. Open that up. And then you can choose the panel state that you want the aircraft to be in to start with. And you can also add auto throttle in or not. The Boeing 727, I do not believe, came with an automatic throttle. I think this is an option that came later. There you go. By the way, that's the engineer doing the fire test. How great is that? So this came later. So if you click show, it brings it up here. And I think we'll actually use that today. It's a very simple system, not used for takeoff and so on or landing, but it can be a nice way to free up a bit of space for you. There you go, all the tests being run. I love this because this is what real flight decks feel like. Things are going on, you're doing something, someone else is doing something else, you know, especially at this stage in the flight on an aircraft with so many tests to run, which you do not have so much of in the modern generation. You can also choose where you want to sit. Yeah, pretty nice. Pretty nice. And you can have the ground cover and so on outside. Oh, there we go. We could add the boarding stairs. So this is a more accessible aeroplane now. We have boarding stairs for our front door, which is much better. And as we go to the back, we should see... It's funny the spoilers are deployed. That's because... I don't know what I've done there. I think I... Now, there we go. Yeah, I had my hardware set up to deploy them. And here's the rear stairs. Pretty cool. Really cool, in fact. You can see there the ducting goes back, and then the engine's here, and then there's the exhaust. Good. We can also go to the pre-flight, and in here we can set the load for the flight, or even import it from SimBrief. So I'm going to do that. So this is very straightforward, just to show it works. If you have this wherever it was, and then you click import, it imports it nicely, and puts it in the right place as well, so it's balanced the fuel, which is quite good. And then I'm just going to do immediate loading. If I press play, and then skip, play, skip, that's the fuel on board, and there are our weights. The next bit is in the takeoff section where we can put in the departure. So we're going from Corfu, LGKR. We're going to take off from runway 16, and it shows us that, and we'll try a flat 15 takeoff. Wind is 09010, yeah, that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. So it shows us that the maximum weight is 83 tons. If I go back to pre-flight, I can see that we are actually at 68 tons. So we can do that. And then we have the takeoff EPR required and the trim. So you can just click set and the speeds set, and the bugs all go correctly there. Good. So unbelievably, that's a takeoff performance. And to show you the route we're doing, here's our Navigraph charts. We're taking off from Corfu. We're going to head out. I'm doing a departure, the Parna 1 Bravo departure. So we'll take off southerly, and then we'll make a straight out departure. So bit of a turn round, straight ahead at 500 feet, left turn, and then we take the 137 radial out to KRK. Now it says outbound from GAR, but I'm going to set it up to be inbound to KRK because that is going to happen very quickly, just 12 nautical miles. And then we go outbound from KRK on 118 and carry on and join the airway at Parna. And from Parna, if we go back to our route, we're going to join the airways. So how are we going to do this? We are flying VORs and airways. Don't get intimidated. This is a really straightforward way of doing this, as well as the full INS system. First of all, go to your options, or even aircraft, and you can choose how you want to navigate. So, no, it is in options. Ignore me. Up here, obviously, we have the options. So, I'm going to go with the Civ A INS, but you have the option of going with the GNS 530, which if you were to power on, you'd soon see is the standard GPS, and you could load in your flight plan as standard into that and get yourself all the way down to Athens. You've got the GNS XLS, which is a bit more of an FMS. I haven't actually used this one before. So this would be the sort of thing that would have typically been fitted into an aircraft like the 727 subsequently. How do you turn it on? Unbelievably, there is a button that says on. I've never seen that before. I was trying the brightness up and down, pressing other things like enter. So it's doing its self-test. This reminds me a bit of the UNS-1, that FMS that I've got a tutorial on the channel, using things like the Fokker F28. So there we go. So this is a pretty cool idea, and this has been done by Flight Sim Studio themselves. So that's probably a better way to go than the GPS, in all honesty. However, the situational awareness can be a bit tricky because, of course, you won't get a nice big nav display like you're used to if you're coming from a really modern airliner. So there we go. Here's our position. We're in LGKR. I'm going to hit enter. And there it is. That's all it's got. It knows we're going from Corfu to Athens. So I have never used this before. So on the flight plan page, if you just press flight plan up there and press it again, flight plan list, I'm selecting the flight plan we have and hitting enter. And there's our route, Parna. It takes us on the airway. And if I can find the next page, it takes us through Picad, which is our arrival. And I can hit select and enter. And there we go. It now has a bit of a route. If I want the aircraft to follow this route, I need to swap this to GPS. And now the course bar can automatically swap. You can see there. So in normal nav mode, it's just sitting at 0. And I can click it and it will get GPS and it will let us fly in nav mode along that course. So that is even easier. And then I can hit depart. Let's do that. Enter. And if I can get this right, this is testing my abilities here. So we're departing from L. G. My goodness, that is an unbelievable keypad. Completely different way. And we're going to go from runway 16. We're going to take off from the SID. Let me just get the SID right. Let's just check we have it. It's the Picad. Sorry, the Parna. I keep saying Picad, that's the arrival. Parna 1 Bravo. So, next page. Previous page. Parna 1 Bravo. I'm not quite sure. Yeah, so look at that. Each key actually does 2 selections. So not Parna. Let's just make sure we have definitely got that right. Parna 1 Bravo. Excellent, excellent, excellent. And then I'm going to hit enter. Waypoint to the SID. Runway 16, 500 feet to KRK, then D118J, D118P, Parna. Looks good. Yes. Enter. And there we go. That is the first waypoint it has. So now we can navigate the airplane using this and GPS, and we effectively just need to put the autopilot into its sort of nav mode. By the way, we've been working away on this, but let's get the engineer working on the before start flow as well. Closing up all the doors. That's great. So that's happening automatically for us. I hope anyway. See what happens. Seatbelt signs going on. We've got the fuel, so why not? I'm just going to clear that autopilot flashing. Now, of course, there is another way to do this, which is to go full Civ A INS. Now, I did this in my last video. In the INS, you can load in the waypoints. So you would put it into align mode, enter the initial waypoint, enter the coordinates, and then enter the coordinates of any waypoints that you want up to the limit of, I think it's 9 on these. Yep, 9, and then you're back to the start. So that is quite a complex system, and I don't really need to show it in today's video. We have done it before, but what you would do is you would use the Civ A INS to load in, for example, the end of the SID. The SID's being flown with radio aids, so you could just load in Parna as you'd have the airport, then perhaps you could have KRK or just Parna. Yeah, you'd probably have KRK, then Parna, and then you'd have the subsequent waypoints loaded in. And then you can use this to fly direct to it, or to navigate to waypoints that don't have radio beacons. The final way to navigate is, of course, simply to put this into nav mode and fly direct to VOR. So if you do a VOR to VOR flight plan in SimBrief, we could just do that. So as I said, we're taking off. I want to take off flight time to 500 feet, and then I'm going to turn left and intercept the 137 or the 317 radial from KRK. KRK is frequency 114.7, so I'll go down to my nav and I'll go 114.7. That is in active. And I'll actually just back up the FO size with the GAR 108.8, just in case we're not able to receive signal from the KRK on the ground. So 1147 is the frequency. So then I can put the course bar on the inbound, which is 137 in this case. So spin it around to 137. If you're confused about using needles, I do have a video how to fly with needles, so do please look that up. But it looks like this is looking good actually. We have signal, so that's a good sign. Let me just get it to 137. There we go. So now I can take off and intercept this course bar and use that to navigate my way down to KRK and then away from it. Unfortunately, because we're going out via this waypoint Parna and onto an airway, it won't be much use for later on bits, although frankly it looks like a pretty straight line. So what we'll do today is let's use this new FMS. I quite like it. Always a bit of fun, although this does mean I need to reload what I've just done. So we have a bit of a plan for our departure here. We've done our performance, we're taking off, we're going to go flap 15 and taking off at EPI of 2, rotating at 123 knots. Quite a low speed actually, but we do have quite a bit of flap out. I'm initially taking off in nav mode, climbing straight ahead to 500 feet, and then we're going to turn and intercept this course bar, which should make a bit more sense once we're on the runway. The only thing to do now is to set up some of the automatics. The initial climb altitude is not listed here, so I'm going to say we're cleared up to, let's put in 7,000 feet. So I need to put that into my altitude selector over here, 7,000. If you need it in smaller increments, you can click that mode switch next to it. So yeah, that is where we're headed, and I'll just centralize this or cage this horizon. And we have our flight plan active in the FMS system down here. It's literally just the flight plan. So then I can swap over into GPS mode and head to a waypoint Parna and carry on with my flight. And then we'll look at how to set up the arrival at the other end. It should be a really good flight. I love flying this sort of aeroplane. I'm looking forward to this a lot. But there we go. In terms of automatics, the autopilot is down here. We'll look at that in flight. I'm not setting anything up on there at the moment. It's basically time to go through to engine start. Now, although we do have this very handy phone to give us the procedures, the next one is after start. So we do need to start the engines ourselves. What I'm going to do is start engine number 3 here on stand once I close up that door, and then we can push back and start the other 2 and then taxi out. It's going to be a short taxi because we're going to take off suddenly, so just a short taxi over there. Right, let's close up those doors. So we'll go to aircraft, close and close. So lots of aircraft of this generation, we need to turn the air conditioning packs off, so I'm going to close those, I'll turn them off here to allow us to have enough pressure to start the engine. Then what I need to do is come to the front of the airplane. Everything sort of sat still in the off position, so let's start engine number 3. We're going to put on our beacon outside. So that is on, so the flight engineer did that for us already. The flight engineer has really done everything we could imagine. It's great. I can't quite see it. Where is it on this airplane? There it is. It's quite faint under the fuselage there, just about rotating. It does it really nice at night, by the way, that beacon. Let's just let's cheat a bit. Let's just put it forward in the day. There you go, look at that. I love rotating beacons. They just flash these days. Awesome. I'm not sure what that light is coming from. Oh, it's the red lights from that car. That would be annoying if you're trying to set up an airplane in the middle of the day. Sorry, in the middle of the night, but there we go. Right, so we are ready to go. Doors are all closed. So let's come up onto the overhead panel. And by the way, the flight engineer has done lots of things. They've sorted out the hydraulic power switches. They've done the setup of the window heat system and so on. So yeah, very nice indeed. Anyway, we picked engine number 3. So engine 3 is up here. No, indeed, engine number 3. So it is not actually the top engine, but it's this one. So we're going to put this to ground for ground engine start. If I get the camera right to do it. There we go. That goes to ground. That will now redirect the air. You actually have to hold it in place initially. You can see here N2 is spinning. Once that reaches 20%, which is, takes a bit of air pressure. That's why we turned off those air conditioning packs. I can start up the engine by simply go on 20%, and then we put this start lever to idle. Fuel is now being introduced. We have an exhaust gas temperature, which is great, and the N1 is going to start to increase, and we'll see a pressure ratio. Old school engine starting this is. You can see it spinning over there. Love it. I suppose it's so far out the way it doesn't actually matter if you start this engine on stand. I assumed you'd start the high up one, but actually it's not high up, is it? It's the same level, so it doesn't make a difference which one you do. The ground crew might need to move away though. Let's push back. Release the parking brake. I think the tug's there. Maybe not. The camera system in Flight Sim continues to frustrate me. Why it's so far back really makes a mess. Okay, there's no tug coming. I'm not sure, they must have changed the shortcut in 2024, so we'll be taxiing off stand. So let's get all those engines up and running. Straightforward enough. If you look, and now the engine is stabilized, that's gone back to off, which is what you would do. So let's start engine number 1 now. So put it to ground and repeat for engine 1 and 2. Fantastic news now. The engines are all stabilized and the start switches can all be put to the normal off position. And then we can, of course, just get the engineer to do the hard bit for us, the after start flow. Usually quite long flow, but the particularly tricky bit is going to be on this electrical panel. So I just want to see what the engineer does. There you go. So the engineer is swapping the generator around and then synchronizing. It's crazy. This is clever stuff. Yeah, synchronizing them so that you can get nice smooth electrical changeover, and then setting it up accordingly. They'll also do the same to the fuel panel. So really, you can mess around with this if you want, but you don't need to, which is pretty crucial if you want to be able to use this aeroplane on your own, especially on VATSIM. By the way, this is a great advantage of having an FMS, is that you can obviously fly on VATSIM and fly all the modern stars and SIDS and so on. Okay, the after start procedure is now complete, and what is great is in the 727, I don't know why I was getting upset that there's no tug, we're going to do a power back. Absolutely awesome. Not something you can do on many aircraft. Because the engines are up and out the way and they're not going to inhale gravel by using reverse thrust, they're safe to do it, although I'm sure a lot of airlines would have banned it by the time the 727 was retired. But there we go. So what it means is on normal aircraft with the engines below the wing, reverse would blow gravel and so on forward, and then the engine would suck that in. Not an issue here, the engines are up and out the way, so we can do it, and they're also away from ground personnel at the back of the aeroplane, except for this ground engineer who seems very interested in being near the back of the aeroplane. But there we go. So to do this procedure, let me jump back into the flight deck. We have done the after start, like I say. We set the flaps on a little bit later according to FSS's quick start guide anyway. So all engines are started, and we need to have all reversers working, which they are, and there's not heavy rain. And we're leaving the air conditioning packs off for now. So I will actually leave them off, which they are. And all we're going to do is use reverse thrust up to 1.4 EPR. So let's release that parking brake. This is going to be cool. Parking brake off. Engines into reverse. And we get up to 1.4 EPR. That's there. Thereabouts. Let me just check the brake. It's definitely off. It is. Oh no! I was getting really excited. There we go. A little bit extra needed just to get it moving. It's a noisy procedure. I've only seen an airliner do it once in my career, and that was a pretty small aircraft as well. It was not a 727 or a jet. As we get to the end of the power back, I'm not going to do any steering because I think that's a little bit reckless. I'm just going to get us back roughly to the centre line. I assume you'd have ground crew nearby to tell you how far back to go, because of course on the flight deck you really don't have a clue how far back the main wheels are. I can, however, see that it's safe for me to taxi clear, so I'm now going to allow it to come to a stop and set the parking brake. And there we go. Now in a good position. It's good fun. It's very noisy, and like I say, not something we do in many other aircraft out there. Right, let's begin our taxi. We're going to put the taxi light on. It's clear on the right, clear on the left. Brakes released. I can get rid of this this big folder now. That is not helping us anymore. If I could figure out how to do that, that would be great. There we go. Folder's gone. Bit of power. Let the airplane roll. And there we go. Nozzle steering is working. You've got to remember this aircraft originally had the same engines and weights as the 727-100, so it's actually quite big, but they did eventually add a bit. There you go, look at that dragging tyre. That's a good effect. You do see that on heavy aircraft. Right, the only thing we need to do during the taxi really is set up the flaps and the flight controls, but I'm going to let the engineer run their flow. That will include things like sorting out the air conditioning packs, I hope, which need to go on, and the electrics and so on. So there's lots more to be done by the engineer. Again, nice and straightforward for us. So to run through the takeoff briefly, I'm going to run the engines forward, let them stabilize, then set 2 EPR on the EPR gauges. Once that's set, we're going to roll, and as we get to 80 knots, I'm going to make sure, or sorry, passing 40 knots, the thrust should be set. And then as we get to the rotate point, which is bugged here, we are going... Ooh. Okay, I'm not sure quite what happened there, but during the taxi procedure, the airplane shut off, so something must have been in the wrong position, probably during the electrical power changeover. Anyway, I have it back up and running now, and we were going through the takeoff. So we're going to apply thrust, stabilize the engines, then set 2.0 EPR, engine pressure ratio. That is a different, it's just a different way of measuring engine thrust compared to N1, which is just the fan speed at the front. Once it is set and we're accelerating down the runway. We're going to get to our rotate speed of today, 123. Rotate the aircraft, climbing wing away between 138 and 148 knots. So nose up to about 15 degrees, maximum about 17. At 500 feet, we'll make our left turn and intercept this course bar. Sorry, a bit of a right left turn to intercept this course. And then we'll climb up to our initial altitude of 7,000 feet, as is in the window. I'm actually going to arm outsail. No, the autopilot's off, so that won't work. Good. So we'll climb up to 7,000 feet. Passing 1,500 feet, I'll lower the nose, accelerate, retract the flaps, and then move the EPRs to 1.7 for a sort of en route climb EPR. And we do have this automatic EPR limit, so hopefully that will adjust this bug, because you can see this bug is just set like this, so we can follow that for our rough engine schedule. Good. Right, so the only thing that is not set... Oh, the engineer did set the flaps. That's good news. So we have our flap 15 set for takeoff. Great. So yeah, just by clicking on the taxi procedure, the engineer did set those for us as well, which is really nice. So we'll go for a full length takeoff, and we need to run our flight controls. Let's have a look at them. Lots of flight controls on this generation of airliner. It has inboard ailerons, outboard ailerons, and roll spoilers. I do like it. Big controls, and rather slightly limited by the fact we are nose wheel steering at the moment. But there we go. Rudder, by the way, not needed to be as powerful on an aircraft like this as some others, because of course the engine's all in the middle, so even with an engine failure, that rudder will have the authority, because there's not much yaw as a result of an engine failure. Great. So time to line up and get going. Releasing the brakes, put on all the landing lights. Let's get the strobe lights on as well. Good. Then a bit of thrust. Let's have a look at the outside. Show lots of lights on the wings. There we go. Yes, excellent, excellent. On the nose as well. And away we go. Right, on the runway, let's run the before takeoff procedure. I'm imagining this will be things like the anti-skid coming on. Yes, auto brake goes to RTO, which removes this amber warning light. And I think we'd have the anti-skid on for takeoff, but we shall see shortly. Yes, there we go. Anti-skid comes on now as well. Obviously not used for taxi for some reason. I guess they don't trust it too much. There we go. Our lovely 727 ready for takeoff. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Remember, quite a low rotate speed, but if you look at the flaps, they're quite big. So you've got quite a lot of flap, double slotted on these outboard ones as well. That's something you don't see much of these days. Especially even larger aircraft now can get away with single slotted. It's also interesting that we have flaps, Kruger flaps on the inside. As you can see, it is indeed a slat on the outside of the wing. You'll notice we have this sort of vein here. This is used to keep span-wise flow limited, so it creates a vortex that runs down the wing and limits the span-wise flow. Quite what the advantage of that is, I don't know, but there is presumably a very good aerodynamic reason that the test pilots wanted to have that added on for, perhaps to do with aileron control near the stall. Anyway, there we go. Let's get it in the air. So brake released, don't need to put forward yoke in, it doesn't really matter on this aircraft because the thrust is not underneath the engines. So I'm going to set the power forward, just make sure you can actually hear it. So sensible amounts. Engines all stabilised, let's go to 2 EPR, as best we can balance them all. Keeping it straight with the rudder, and away we go. Trim was already set earlier, remember, of course. Bouncing along. Now, of course, you can also do the full checklist if you want. I've just been using the procedure there. Quite slow acceleration. These are not powerful engines. 126, we can start our rotation. Not too much. There we go, it's climbed away nicely. Positive rates. Gear up. Holding it at 15 degrees. We need to get to 500 feet, remember? There we go. Awesome. What a great place to have been. Don't want to pitch up too much. Right, through 500 feet. And now I'm making my left turn here. Just to intercept this course bar, which is off to our left. Like I say, do have a video on that if you want some help on flying through VORs. Speed is good, we're at V2 plus 10, and as we get to 1500 feet, we'll move into the acceleration phase. So there we go, now we're on the intercept. So this white line here will start to move to the right as we join up, which is great. Through 1500 feet, I'm going to lower the nose now, start trimming forward, there's 10 degrees. 160, let's bring the flaps in a stage to 5. Got to get the flaps right, especially on these older aircraft, but also on any aircraft. But I leave takeoff thrust until we have brought those in. Now it's funny, the airplane is definitely banking to the right, so I need to check that all my trims are in the right place and that the engines are... Yeah, the engine looks pretty stable actually. If anything, it should be going the other way. Bit more forward trim. There we go, just coming into that line now, so I'm going to turn right to intercept it. And if I look at the FMS, I can put in a direct shortly. Right, lowering the nose, get through 200 knots now. It's obviously not going as well as I'd hoped there. Right, wind clean, so we'll bring the flaps up. And I can engage the autopilot now. Really easily. I'm going to go autopilot. And it's just holding everything where it is. Next, I'm going to put it into heading select. So if I bring the heading way around, something I could have done earlier. Flaps are up, there's 250 knots. Heading way around, you can see how quickly these things get away from you. And then to make a right turn, just to head over, we're only 5 miles away from our waypoint now. I don't want to go any faster, so I'm bringing that thrust back. And you can see there the limit reduced. So there we go, heading's now to the right on an intercept heading. Then if I click heading cell, the airplane will do that. I'm going to outsell 7,000, so it does level off at 7,000. And of course I can make it fly that compass by turning the lateral navigation to navlock. And now it will intercept that localizer, or that course bar as it were. And there we go. So it's now going to climb. We're still doing manual throttle by the way, because my speed bug is set way back down there for V2. So let's set the en route speed of 250 knots. That's a speed bug. Yeah, so we're in Vorlock navigation, so it's navigating us along here, although it's about to pass the waypoint. So let's swap over to GPS nav, goes into GPS, and I'm going to go to, should have done this first, direct, KRK, enter. There we go. And now we're going from the VOR, we'll see it here on the charts in just a moment, we're going here, KRK, and then we'll carry on with our route. Now you can see the speed has washed right off because I haven't engaged the auto throttle, and it's just held it in a pitch mode, and look how dangerous that gets so quickly. One of the things with these older style autopilots. So look, we are way too nose high. It's actually reached 7,000 just in time to save us there. The way to fix that would be, obviously, you have this pitch control here, so we should have lowered the nose on that, or set it to a different mode. So yeah, there you go. You've got to be very careful. That was way too slow. So this is counting down now to the next waypoint. If we go to flight plan, we should see it, D118J, and let's carry on to Parna. So this is good news. We're going to climb up now to our en route climb altitude as the flaps are retracted, and we're going to climb it to 230 for today. So we'll imagine air traffic control clears as flight level 230, and I'll show you a better way to climb. So first of all, set the throttles, set the climb thrust, because we just accelerated through there. It all runs away with you. This is a powerful jet aircraft. And what I'm going to do is arm out cell, which is armed, and then I'll put it into IS hold. Now it should hold 300 knots. So let's, or we can set it to a vertical speed. There we go. So you've got different options. I'm actually going to set, if I set high vertical speed and let the speed come back to 250 knots, I'll keep it at climb thrust. We can go back up to 1.8. Notice how as we climb, that allows us to go higher and higher with EPRs. But you'll see that the current climb rate, 2,000, almost 3,000 feet per minute, is still not managing. So I'm just going to increase the vertical speed. Although frankly, this is probably a decent climb speed now. So what I can do instead is go IS hold there, And now if I just keep the thrust at climb thrust, the airplane will maintain that speed by pitching up and down. We're not using the auto throttle yet because we're still climbing, so I want to set climb thrust. Alternatively, you could just set a really high target speed and set the vertical speed, but that's not a very controlled way of doing it. The airplane's sort of protected now. If the power was to be lost, or I was to do something like that, you'll notice it lowers the nose to me straight away because it's trying to maintain that airspeed. Likewise, if I add power, and that's because it's an IS hold, so this is a more protected mode than using vertical speed, and certainly more than pitch hold. Through 10,000 feet, landing lights go off, taxi light off, strobe and navigation and beacon I'll leave on, and we'll let the passengers walk around for a second, and I can run, or get the engineer to run, the after takeoff checklist. You'll notice I haven't used a flight director. It's not all that important on this generation. They're sort of quite separate at this stage. But yeah, you could bring up a flight director, put it into heading mode and so on, but you'll see it's essentially completely separate from the autopilot. So I'm not going to waste my time moving it around just for the sake of it if I'm not manually flying. Very different to these days where you would have it on. There you go, you can see we're heading to Parna because the waypoint is in here. So two options, we can do the radio nav as we did for the first part, or as you can see, much easier now, it's just going to fly these waypoints for us. So let's get up to our cruising level. Nice and promptly, and look at that, doing 250 plus knots, and we're slightly over on the EPRs. Just got to keep up to date with those. It's funny to me that the EPR in the middle is slightly lower. Engine 3 is a slightly different ratio. So I'm just balancing those there. There we go. But yeah, fantastic rate of climb. That's actually quite a powerful machine. I take it back. More powerful than I imagined it would be. The automatics on this airplane are quite something. So they are very similar to old school airplanes. As you can see, we have the flight directors over here, which we aren't using, and the autopilot, which is on board lock. It doesn't have a GPS mode, but we have set it to GPS. There's 1,000 feet to go to 230. We would of course set standard, which is in this case 2992 or 1013. Out select is in amber, so it's armed, and that's because I've pressed out select down here. If you don't, it will not level off at the altitude you put here. So you'll see here shortly, we are climbing a bit fast, but we have a lot of excess power. There you go, and now out has gone green, and that says engaged, so it's in altitude hold mode effectively. Now, we could put it into heading cell by pressing heading cell, and it will simply then follow our heading bug. So I press heading cell. It says confidently, maybe I have to do that. There we go. I have to change the mode out of nav lock, because in nav lock it will follow either the GPS line, or the radio beacon, or the ILS. And now we're in heading mode, and it will just, like any airplane, follow our heading bug. As I move it left, the airplane goes left, and so on. So let's put it back to nav lock, which is what I want it to do. I want it to follow that path, not my heading bug. Let's check that work. Yes, all good. Next thing is the speed. I talked about auto throttle. It's a basic system. You can see it's disengaged right now. The airplane's just running away. I have the max EPR set. I think that's probably quite fast enough, somewhere around 300 knots. It's only a short flight, so I'm just going to hit engage. And now we do have it working. It's doing them in sync, as it were. There we go. Now it's synchronized and good. Otherwise, yeah, we had a bit of asymmetric. Well, it's not asymmetric thrust, I suppose, but the middle engine running at different EPRs, which do seem to have all gone to the same number now. So that's interesting. But there we go. So that's it. We now have a normal airplane. We can have heading cell. We can have it in navigation mode. We can do a direct. So in the FMS, if I take the direct button, and we can then choose a waypoint to go straight to. It's obviously got all the way from the departure. Where are we currently routing towards? If I go to flight plan, we're currently going to IPTES. So if I go direct to Elvas, execute, there we go, and then now we go back to flight plan, Elvas. And you can see that's the last 3 waypoints before the arrival, and we're going to get there in just a few minutes. So it's time to just show you the arrival we're going to fly. Other things, by the way, while we're in the cruise, actually, let's just before we do that, let's just look at the airplane. You've got the engineer panel working away. It is, well, I'm not sure why that pump was off. I'm going to turn it on. I don't like seeing amber lights on my airplane. Something I failed to set up was the cabin altitude over here. So that is my fault for not doing that before takeoff. So remember to do that. Landing altitude, flight level altitude, cabin altitude that you want. There you go. So now it can sort itself out. Flight mode and auto. Good. Yes, that's my mistake. But there we go. So systems are up and running. The airplane's moving around. You can do a better job than I did there. We've got 36 miles to get to the point Elvas. So, looking at the arrival, we're flying Picad to Charlie, which takes us Picad, KOR, EGN. And we've seen already that I could tune in this NDB and then this NDB, and we could navigate the airplane there ourselves. That's called 392. And in this generation of airplane, you may well do that. Where's the ADF? They always hide ADFs, which are the NDB tuning instruments around the flight deck. They're rarely with the normal navigation stuff. Like these days, they're mostly gone. On a brand new Boeing 787, you're quite likely to find that it doesn't actually have an NDB tuning option at all. So there it is. There's the NDB. Yeah, always in some strange place. So there is the NDB, always in some strange place, and we could tune them in here, and then we could navigate them needle to needle. So 392, 382, 392, 382, and then you can display that needle over here. So it's currently set to VOR, but if I put it to NDB, it would eventually show us the waypoint, although there seems to be a bug there where that's not quite working. So I'm not going to do that though, because we've got our lovely FMS. So why would we want to? Again, it's totally fine to do, and it's the sort of thing I do on stream all the time. Yeah, there's definitely something up with this trim on this airplane. Let's make sure we have the aileron trim set to 0. Yeah, we've got 0. 0. But look at that yoke. If I disconnect the autopilot, I assume the airplane is going to snap to the side. Bizarre. We have the same weight. The engines are doing the same thrust. I don't know what's going on, but that's at neutral, and it is just severely putting itself to the side. There you go. We put a bit too much trim in there. Let's see if that's enough to keep it steady. Very odd. I've not seen that before. In fact, now it's going significantly that way. So let's just try and set it to perfectly neutral. Still going the other way. How strange. I've never seen an airplane react like this. So slightly right. Get the rudder in the middle. Very gently right still. I think that's got to be it there. Something just seemed to have got into it early on in the flight. So let's put that on. Arm the outsail. There we go. Out modes. And put that back to Vorlock, because when you disengage it loses a lot of these modes. Now unfortunately it can't intercept that because we're pointing the wrong way. So I'm going to put the heading mode to the right and then hit let's give it heading mode for a while. Heading sail. Let it turn towards an intersect. Good. Anyway, back at 22,000 feet. Speed's still on. I think we've mostly solved that trim issue. And what I want to do now, once it's pointing towards this inset bar, there it goes. Vorlock. That's now armed, and as it gets over there, it should intercept it. Yeah, so let's put in the Picad 2 Charlie, and then the ILS Zulu 03 right. There you go, it's gone green, so it's on the mode. So, arrival, there it is, enter, just like we did earlier. Picad 2 Charlie. Doesn't seem to have much of an arrival. No, it doesn't actually. So maybe it's going to be an approach. 3 rights. ILS Zulu. Via Picad by EGN, Echo Golf November. Enter. There you go, EGN, and then it actually will fly us all the way around onto the ILS. So I'm just going to select that. Enter. Now unfortunately it doesn't seem to have quite worked. There's loaded in the approach. I don't think it's going to be able to do it. Certainly not the way I've set it up. You can do holding, by the way, as well, which is really, really good. This is quite cool, by the way. If you go to the AFIS button, you can actually see a visual representation of what it's trying to do. But yeah, there we go. So let's set up for the ILS. I think we are going to fly it manually after all my excitement and not having to. So let's do the start, which is, this is going to be hard work. This is going to be an intense second part of the video. PICAD, KOR, which is on 392. Which I'll hopefully be able to display as we get closer, or things are getting really difficult. And it's down to the usual things now to set up for the approach. So we've got two charts here, but the ILS, going to be traditional ILS, course is 032111.1. We'll set that up later. We might need to do a bit more of our own navigating before then. But I will put in 111.1 as a ready to go frequency available to me, because I think I have actually managed to get the FMS to do it. 11.1 on both sides. As you can see now, the FMS is actually correcting itself, and I managed to get the rest of the arrival in. So at the moment, it should head to PICAD, and then KOR, and then EGN. And from there, I'll pretend we're being radar vectored on heading, and then join the ILS. We can't change the course at the moment, but I will do that shortly, or later on once we get there. So PICAD, 7,000 feet is the minimum altitude, 6,000 feet after that, KOR, VOR. So let's get ourselves starting to descent, because this could soon run away with us. We're actually not that far away. Other things we might do is our landing performance. So if I go into the tablet again, or the file, we have flight, by the way, in here. You can see your descent calculation if you need it, and landing. So we'll land flaps 30. It's not quite those conditions. Oh, that's the problem with doing that. So it's 15 degrees, we're going to 299227 at 5. We need 1500 meters land, and we have more than enough of that. And there's the EPR, and there's the speeds. VREF is 130 to land flaps 30. So there we go, that's what we will do. Good, let's close that. And I'm going to start slowing us down. So I can just bring the speed bug back. Oh, it is back. I'm not quite sure then. There we go, the autopilot is engaged, but it had come back to idle there. So what I'm going to do is bring the speed back a little bit. Send it to 50 knots. Don't want to get too slow, but we're only at 23,000 feet. If you're higher, you might need to descend before you start slowing down that much. Okay, the engines will come back to idle. Then I can put in the new altitude. Currently 7,000 feet is the lowest we can go. So I've got 7,000 feet in the window. And then I'm going to arm outcell and put in IS hold. I'm going to turn off the auto throttle, and I can now manage the throttles myself to get the descent rate I want. So a nice gentle 250 knots descent, and the airplane will try and maintain that. So if I reduce the throttle, it will have to lower the nose, and there you go, we're doing 2,000 feet per minute. Nice. And then it's going to level off at 7,000. We just need to be very careful here, because it will level off at 7,000, and we won't be able to add power because I turned off the auto throttle. So we have to be very careful that we don't get slow. There's another way to do this in much the same way as we would have done the climb, which is to put it into vertical speed mode. So hit vertical speed, it will then steady itself at whatever it's doing, so somewhere around there, and then I can re-engage the auto throttle, and it will now maneuver the throttles to maintain the bug speed, 250 knots, whilst also continuing to maintain 1800 feet per minute. So that's also quite a good way to do a descent, as long as you keep an eye that you could overspeed like this. I need to put in a landing minima, though I'm not entirely sure, I will confess, exactly where that would go in on this airplane. I believe at 130 knots approach speed we should be Cat C. It doesn't make a difference. 471 feet is our minimums. So I could bug that. Something like that. There we go. I think that's going to be the NDA. You've got the light here for it. You've got a comparator up here. So this will show you if your instruments are disagreeing between the two sides. Quite a handy gauge to have, definitely. Still at 20,000 feet. I'm not entirely convinced we're going to be descending fast enough for this arrival. Current two waypoint is, if it's flight plan, is PICAD, which we're getting to in 9 miles. So yeah, we're not descending quite fast enough for my liking. So if I want to increase the vertical speed, I can push this knob down, and the auto throttle is engaged, so it will automatically bring the thrust back. So actually, this is quite a controlled way of doing it. Probably a good idea, especially for managing the sheer amount of things going on. So we've got our minimums, we've got a way to fly the approach, which is we'll use the FMS, and we have the backup of the needles. There we go, the NDB is now working, which is good news. It seems to be, certainly. So we'll head here, then here, and then take a heading select and inset that ILS here, and fly down the approach. The Autopilot does have the modes to do that. So some other things we have, speed brake if we need it. Deploy those. They're quite effective. You can see the trim having to run straight away. But like I said, big flight controls on this airplane. So if I deploy them all the way out, big panels. I've got to say, compared to the 320, the Boeing aircraft do seem to have pretty effective speed brakes. They're very good. And you can see there, it's not actually helping us descend. All it's doing is causing the auto throttle to add power, because remember, we're in vertical speed mode, so it's just going to do the same vertical speed whatever we do there. 16,000 feet, we are now 1 mile, so if I look on the chart, I expect to see us passing overhead of Picard. There we go. 16 miles here to get down to, we can now get down to 7,000 feet on this leg, and then after KOR 6,000 feet. So we'll leave 7,000 feet in the window, but we are a bit high. We're actually coming out in the bay here. So I can help it down, like I say, go to IS hold, idle the throttles, auto throttle off, and then if you deploy some speed brakes, doesn't like that, because of the gear horn, so I'll keep them just off the bottom, but there we go, speed brakes out, and now the airplane will have to lower the nose to maintain that airspeed. There we go. Dropping like a stone. Got your total air temperature here, that's pretty good. I like it. It makes sense, this airplane. Let's run the approach checklist now, or the approach procedure. You hear things going on. Lights and switches. Oh, auto brake, by the way, is up here. Quite unusual. So I'm going to put that to, I'm going to do minimum. It's a long runway in Athens, and we're coming in quite slow with lots of flaps. So I'm hoping minimum will be enough for us there. So the approach checklist is done and we're descending down. Now something we didn't look at in flight and we need to look at is of course the night lighting. So I'm just going to move the time on. We've got all our lights on. Let's have a look outside. Yes, love it. Really impressive strobe lights. Flight Sim 2024 seems to have very strong strobe lights, but there we go. That is probably what they would look like, especially as you can see we've entered some sort of cloud layers. We've entered the humidity layer and suddenly you get those beams of light from all those landing lights. That's very cool. Quite overwhelming actually. Like I say, love that rotating beacon. I can see it's leveled off, so I'm just going to get the speed brakes away and add power. But let's engage the auto throttle just to make our lives simple here. So we go from minimum clean and engage the auto throttle. Good. Right, back to the night lighting. There we go. So the airplane is controlling its speed again. Yeah, nice. Very volumetric. There is a slight sort of effect there where you can see it showing against the modelling. The strobe lights are almost a little bit too strong in Flight Sim 2024, but I do like it because they are very, very bright on the real thing. Especially, like I say, in this cloud layer. It's quite cool to see it here. Because this is an effect you get. As you get into these lower levels, you suddenly start to see sort of bloom around the lights. Yeah, very nice. I wonder if the cabin's lit up. Let's have a quick look. Oh dear, the humidity seems to be causing a bit of an issue there. That's the landing lights bleeding into the cabin. But there we go. Very old school cabin. But yeah, this would be a bit concerning. The look of the sort of a bit too fumey or smoky that, and not too. I don't think I want to look at that too long. Right, let's put it back into the daylight, and I just want to do a bit of handling as well before we do it. So one thing I noticed earlier with this airplane, so let's just turn off the autopilot. Like we've already dealt with the trim, autopilot off, and we'll fly the rest. Yep, I turned it off. So there is a slight, still not quite in trim, I'm not sure quite what's going on there, but we have mainly solved that. I'll turn off the auto throttle as well. So some things about the 727, it's a T-tail, so it has the ability to deep stall. which is a nasty situation where if you stall the aeroplane, and I'll show you how, the rough air coming off the top of the wings where it's stalled will actually run backwards and block out the tail. It stops the tail being effective, and that means you can't recover. So the aircraft like this would have a stick pusher. You can hear the gear horn there if we bring the throttles back to idle. But yeah, at neutral, a bit of a right tendency, but mostly solved it. Yeah, so that's complaining, it's saying you shouldn't be at idle, you're not ready to land. So hold the nose up, hold the nose up. Stick shaker. And that's dropping the nose. Now it's hard to know. Flight Simulator doesn't always animate if you've got a stick pusher. The way that nose is dropping, it looks a little bit to me like a stick pusher. It sort of would yank it out of your hands. Whether the 727 had one for sure is another question. But yeah, it is a dangerous configuration, this T-tail, for stalling in particular. So it's very important you don't stall one. But yeah, there we go. We're trying. It's unlikely to be as forgiving as some other airplanes. This feels quite forgiving, so you won't get yourself into too much trouble. Oh, there we go. Starting to drop a wing a little bit. Perhaps if I ran the trimmer up, I'll stabilise it. It's quite nose down there. Let's run the trimmer up. It's just sort of oscillating, so that's actually very forgiving. Oh, there you go. It's dropping a wing. Okay. Let's lower the nose. Wings to the horizon. Start feeding the power. Gently recovering. Great thing in this airplane is as you feed the power and it doesn't pitch the nose up or down too much. So generally quite forgiving, a little more forgiving than I would have imagined, but it does eventually bite you. Something else is the roll. So if you enter a roll with a swept-wing aircraft like this, let's just trim it out, get the power a bit more, a bit more oomph there. It should sustain the roll, and actually the wing on the higher side may well gain more lift because it's running a bit faster through the air. So the airplane can tend to sort of go into a bit of an oscillation. But this one, because of that slight trim issue, is that it's slightly being masked. I don't know what's going on with that in today's flight. You can see to the right, it's quite noticeable where the continued roll is actually taking effect, and round it goes. So yeah. Otherwise though, it does feel nice, smooth. I just wish I could solve that trim issue, but this is a great sort of altitude. I love flying airplanes around jet aircraft around 6,000 feet. They just respond so well. It's just where they're set up to be. I'm going to increase the wind on the ground. I don't like Flight Simulator's flat water texture. It looks terrible. But let's just put a bit of wind. We're landing on 03s. Let's just put northeast. I don't know why it's in meters a second on here. Absolute madness. There we go. See, you can see the grid pattern of the way those white caps are forming on the water. You can actually see it. That wasn't the case in Flight Simulator 2020. I know this isn't the Flight Simulator 2024 2020 video, but yeah, 2020 had such good water effects. I'm a little surprised. I don't think there's been any improvement on the water. The 2020 water had even those sort of currents and stuff you could see in it. It was fantastic. Anyway, enough of that. Yeah, it's a responsive aeroplane. Remember, this is a relatively small jet, so I would expect it to be quite light and nimble in some respects, and it certainly feels it. It's not realistically how you're going to be flying it around a lot, but you will be doing more manual flying in this than you would in some other aircraft. So, speaking of that, we've seen that it can fly in arrival. We've had our fun. Let's just bring it in for the ILS, I think, and use the more basic modes. Right, this is getting quite a lot of high workload here. So I'm going to bring the speed back to 200 knots. Oh, thereabouts. Set 200. There we go. Oh, 200 knots. And I'm going to turn around and point towards this NDB. That, if I bring up the charts, is going to be this NDB EGN. I'm going to leave that NDB, descend to 4,000 feet, and then inset the ILS. We can do that all without the FMS. So we'll maintain 6,000 feet for now. This is how you'd be flying in the old days. What we can do is bring up the ILS, so 1111032. So I'm going to swap over to nav mode now, which is what I'm going to use for final. You need it to be in that to fly the ILS, otherwise it would just stay in the FMS mode. We want 032, let's get that 6,000 as well. What am I doing? I think I've wound it all the way through. Zero 032, and we have the ILS up. Frequency 111.1. Good, it's active. Great. So the NDB is now in front of me, so we point towards that. It's gone through 6,000. So not an issue, we are visual here, out over the bay. Now pointing at that NDB, we won't know we've actually gone through it until it sort of goes into cone of confusion. This needle will sort of wobble around. What I can do now, flying sort of in a straight line, I'll put that on, outsail at 6,000 feet, and I'll put it into heading, oh sorry, that's nav lock, so I'll put it back into heading cell by pressing heading. We'll also re-engage the auto throttle at 200 knots. Lots going on. Okay, good. Now it is gently descending. I'm happy to descend to 5,000 feet where we are over the water. So I can put this into vertical speed, which it is, and just put a gentle descent by scrolling that forward slightly. Even the airplane will nose down. And outside is armed in amber here, so it will level off at 5,000. Very important it does that. Coming out over the bay. If we look at our chart, we will soon see our little airplane symbol appear. We're heading in towards this NDB here. We're currently heading east, so we're probably about here, straight in. Here we are then, just arriving over the EGN. I want to head out on a track of 101, and then we intercept the ILS. Again, you could do this through the FMS if you got it to load in properly, which I have not managed to do. So I'm going to carry on 101. We're currently on a heading of, actually, not bad. I think we're just going to keep on in the line we're going. So we're in heading select mode, which I can see out, and heading mode at 5,000 feet. So first of all, we'll go down to 4,000 feet, and then we'll go into vertical speed, which we're in, and just put that down slightly, and I'll arm outsail to make sure it does level off at 4,000. Outsail, a bit of a descent. Next, let's put some flap out and start slowing down. It's hard to see with these throttles. The Airbus method is better. There's a flat 5. I'll start getting some drag out, and we can start reducing the speeds. Now we're in nav mode. The ILS has finally started to get signal. We're close enough to get a bit of signal from it. So that's good news. Now this is a bit of a sharp intercept, which is why it's actually part of the arrival as opposed to just being radar vectored. So we might soften that intercept ourselves. So descending to 4,000 feet. And there we go, coming in over the island. We are drifting slightly because I'm on that heading is correct, but the wind is coming from the northeast. So it's actually blowing us off the track. So we're going to have to correct that ourselves. Again, the FMS would pick up on that. Or you could, if we're doing this properly, actually follow this needle, this NDB needle outbound. So I could bring the heading bug round until we drag the tail back to 101, and that would get us back on the line. Anyway, there we go, 4,000 feet, flat 5. Seems reasonable, nose is in good position, slats are out. Very important, I want the slats out, that's good. We've done the seatbelt signs, I think, or certainly our engineer should have. Yep, everyone's strapped in, ready to go. Good stuff. So, yeah, we are now working our way back slowly towards this line on a bit of an intercept. 4,000 feet, when can we descend from that? That should be platform. Once we get to 14 miles, we can descend to 3,200 feet. Looking good. How are we doing for fuel? Fuel is relatively hidden part of the way. It's, oh yeah, transponder is on now, it's good. Fuel is hidden over here. The engineer must have done that transponder for us. We can see in here our quantity remaining. So we actually have fuel in all of the tanks, which is quite interesting. Often I would expect the centre tank to be drained first, but there we go, we have fuel in all of them. Similar amounts actually, so it keeps them relatively similar. 22 miles out on the ILS, we're plenty low enough. We don't need to slow down anymore either, really. Next is going to be landing. And remember, of course, as I said, the checklist is over here if you would like it, and you can click through. So seatbelt, shoulder harnesses, anti-ice, brake pressure, gear lever, arrival briefing. We've done all that. And yeah, engineers done their bits. Next is just to put the gear flaps and the ignition on. Again, the engineer will be able to do that for us. It's really great. I love this phone. Really lets you enjoy it. What I might do though is just set those go around bugs. So we'll set the EPR bugs 1.89. It must be ignoring me because we've got it set through here. So we'll leave it alone. But important, VRF is 129, the approach 134. So there we go, 134 is set in red. That's slightly risky because the airplane's now going to target that. And I don't want it to yet, so I'm actually going to keep it up there. Otherwise we'll get slow. Okay. We haven't quite managed to drag the nose far enough round. Although we're getting close. You can see the tail of this needle is coming onto 101 now. And we're at 19 miles. So we're pretty close to intercept. Just in case it tries to, I'm going to put it into nav lock now. And that way the airplane is currently in heading, but Vorlock is armed. And then I'm going to bring the heading round onto an intercept. And you can actually see our glide slope is above us and the localizer course is off to the right. So that's good. It's not following the heading bug. It seems that you can't do that. It will just, once you arm it, you're just stuck with the heading you were last on. That's fine. I think it will manage. You normally only do a 30-degree intercept, so really 060 is what we should be on, 062. So one way I could get around that is to go back to turn, engage heading cell, force the airplane to turn the nose round. Oh, here comes the Vorlock anyway, so yeah, this is going to be tight. We're going to go through. We're going to go straight through that. Let's bring the nose round. Glide slope's still well above us. We're 17 miles out, 4,000 feet, so we're fine. So we're going to intercept from the other side. So bring the heading bug slightly through. There we go, we're now paralleling the final approach track. And once we're pointing towards, I'll arm Vorlock. There we go, Vorlock's engaged. And of course you can do this with the flight rate as well, should you choose to, and it will show you what it's commanding. I can set the pitch just to sort of neutral, so I can't be bothered. And altitude hold up here is just showing you the pitch to stay at the current altitude. So you could turn that on, and there you go, so it will now match what the autopilot's doing. And I can set it to approach, and now the glide slope's armed, but crucially it won't do it. I need the autopilot to go to auto glide slope, and there we go. We now have Vorlock, glide slope is armed, glide slope starting to come alive. Let's slow down with the next bit of flat. So I'm going to go to flat 20. There. Bring the speed back. There's the runway up ahead of us. And you can see on the chart what we've done. So we flew here, we went slightly through, we probably end up out here, went through, and now we've come back onto the ILS. So that's the end of that. We're now going to take this glide slope down to the runway. 12 miles to landing, 4,000 feet, that should be the inset point, and there it is. Glide slope has gone green. The airplane will now lower the nose, so we're getting a vertical speed down, and we are beginning our glide slope. I'm going to bring the speed back now to 160 knots. It is nice having the auto throttle, I have to say. See this FS on the left? This is an old school Boeing thing as well, although Airbus had it as well, I think. Original 757s even had this system, where it doesn't show you the airspeed on the artificial horizon, but it does show you if you're fast or slow. But it can be, as you can see, quite disorientating to actually use. So I'm targeting a speed here of 170. I'm actually at 175. I'm actually a bit slow. So, or let's say we want 200. You can see here we're slow. The dot has shown us that we're on S. Likewise, if I put 160, we're now fast 160 because we're coming up to 190 knots, and now we're fast. And then it sort of brings it back in. So it's a bit like having a speed tape on the altimeter before we did. That was on the artificial horizon, which did eventually happen, but not at this stage. So 3,200 feet, coming through 9 miles. Yeah, that seems pretty reasonable. So I'm going to trickle back to 160. Lots of drag on this airplane. It seems to have no trouble slowing down with those big flaps out, so that's good. It's not too slippery on final approach. Going to get a bit of mechanical turbulence off the hills here, I would imagine, with that headwind, which is quite normal for Athens. 7 miles. Time to lower the landing gear. Radio altimeter's come alive, by the way. I've set 200 feet for the minimums, but you can see there 2,300 feet. It comes alive quite early here. Landing gear coming down. There it goes. Landing gear on approach is a great way. If you're coming in a bit fast or it's getting away from you, gear just provides drag and stability, spools up the engines, things get a little simpler. And in turbulence, landing gear is great for stabilising the airspeed as well. Good, let's bring the speed back then and go to our landing flap. Which if I could see through those throttles is going to be 30. That's 25. That's 30. Good. So, got a little bit of extra speed on there, so there we go. So now this fast slow thing is going to be really handy, isn't it? Because you can just look at the artificial horizon and you can track a lot of things. So we are stable at 1,000 feet. We've got the auto brake set, but remember we have to deploy, the speed brake is manual only. We have to deploy that ourselves on landing, so that gives us something else we have to do. What I can also do is start recording. Okay, let's give it a go. Right, also landing checklists. Normally you'd have this done by 1,000 feet. Wow, getting shaken around in turbulence here. Auto throttle doing a good job actually, working hard to keep the airspeed, which it's doing. The turbulence is a little bit overdone in Flight Simulator 2024. I'm not sure, I need to turn it down a little bit more. Look at that. That's pretty aggressive. Diving down, doing 1,500 feet per minute. You'd avoid that these days. It's getting yourself into a bit of an oscillation. It is managing. Just about. Right, let's fly it ourselves. Let's let the poor autopilot have a break. It's done far more work today than it should have needed to. To do that, I'm going to disengage the autopilot. I'm going to get the warning there. And let's just try not to do too much. Let's have a flight vector off as well. Not doing anything. Good. Right, keeping a look out the window. I'm also going to need to turn off the auto throttle, which I should have done before the autopilot really. So auto throttle off. This is the old school Boeing days. Wow, okay, easy to get slow. Keep the power on. Again, the great thing with the throttles on this airplane is that they don't, in the way, they don't cause a pitch power couple, so they don't put you out of trim.
400.
Sinking a bit low here. Yeah, we're going to get to 3 reds, no surprise. Back to 2 whites, 2 reds.
300.
Keeping the speed on point. Now we don't want to go above 10 degrees pitch. That's where the tail can strike.
200.
Very important we avoid that. A little bit high now. Just keeping it steady.
100.
It's a long aeroplane this. Strong headwind, look at that gusty
40,
headwind.
30.
Trickling back the throttle.
10.
There's touchdown. Getting the reversers out to idle. And now gently lowering that nose. Auto brake is engaging. Nose is down. Reverse idle. There we go. It does stop very quickly. Auto brake minimum is doing plenty. Welcome to Athens. Oh yeah, speed brakes. Got to get those up. On a long runway like this, not too concerning, but yeah, you must deploy those yourself. So much to do. Oh, I like that you can hear that. You can hear that thump of the taxi lights. That's good. Nice sound effects. Right, I'm going to bring it to a stop and set the brake. Awesome. There we go. 727. The second flight I've done on it. So there we go, that's all for today's video. The Flight Sim Studio 727 passenger for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and 2024, as seen today in Flight Simulator 2024. This is a great bit of fun. It's such a retro machine, and as I said before, in the cargo variant, this is a really nice way to get into retro flying. It has so many options, and that FMS is fantastic. So this is a great way to fly the aircraft on VATSIM and so on. It's not entirely for beginners, but it's, like I say, if you're comfortable flying A320s and 737s around, then you'll need to invest a bit of time, but then you can get this 727 in the air. The procedures are pretty much covered with that great way of having the flight engineer run the procedures for you. It's still a handful in terms of automation, and in particular, as you saw there, if you can't get the FMS to load in quite what you want, things can unravel pretty quickly, especially with the way you use that auto throttle system. So it's a great challenge, and something I think you'd enjoy if you're into learning your airliners. But yeah, a good bit of fun. Thank you again to Flight Sim Studios for sending over the 727. I hope you've enjoyed the video today. Plenty more videos, guys, live streams coming on the channel in the near future, so do please subscribe if you'd like to see those. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.